Writing epic orchestral music can be a very daunting process. Because of the number of instruments we use in this genre, it's very easy for our mixes to sound muddy and like a cluttered mess, which sounds unclear and unpleasant to listen to. That can be solved with good mixing. The beautiful thing about mixing is that it's an art, so if you want to solve a certain problem, there's an infinite ways in which you can get to solving that issue. And while I'm not a huge mixing expert myself, many of you ask me what I do to get my tracks to sound from something like this to something like this. So I want to outline today the 2 things I take care of in every single one of my tracks to make sure they sound a bit more clear. So the 2 things you need to look out for are mid-range peaks, and second, the ratio between your low end and your high end. But before we dive into those subjects, I want to say 2 things. First, this is going to be a very short tutorial. If you want to learn more about mixing, check out my playlist, How to Mix and Master Orchestral Music, which has many different tutorials, which are 30 minutes long each, and allow you to dive deeper into these subjects. Second thing is that this is a mock-up of a track from Masashi Hamauzu. He composed from Final Fantasy XIII. This track has incredible melodies, beautiful chord progression, amazing transitions, and overall it's like incredible and amazing to listen to. That is true even before it's mixed. So what you want to have, even before you start mixing your music, is tracks that sound amazing and interesting to listen to because of their content. The substance needs to be good, because when you mix your track, like I mentioned in my tutorial, the number 1 mixing rule to get your tracks to sound professional. When you mix your track and master it, you are accentuating what is there. You're not recreating or tweaking, you're accentuating. So if your track is a turd, if you mix and mastering massively, what you're gonna have is a massive turd. That's not what you want. So always make sure to learn and to learn how to orchestrate and arrange, and make sure your arrangements are amazing. Now, if you want to learn that, that's what this whole tutorial channel is about. Check out any tutorial from this channel, you're gonna learn that. And also, if you want to learn how this specific track was made, the stems of every single instrument in this track are available for download on my Patreon page, as well as the MIDI data of this track. But now, let's talk about those 2 things we need to have handled in our track to make it sound clear and amazing. Now, the first thing of the 2 you need to take care of is the peaks in your mid-range. This is because what you want to have is this sort of frequency response as an end result. A frequency response where your low end is the one dominating and dictating the threshold over which other instruments dare not to go. This ideally shouldn't be there, but here I have this peak that goes beyond that, but that's just for a fraction of a second. In a track in general, in average, this would look empty. The low end would look as the loudest part, and the rest will go a bit down like that. That's the ideal shape you want to have. The high end can go back up a little bit, but not beyond the threshold set by the low end on average. The first enemies of this balance are the mid-range peaks, which happen very frequently in orchestral music because the chromatic orchestral instruments, with chromatic I mean orchestral instruments that you write melodies and chord progressions with, tend to rely a lot on this range, the mid-range. So if I remove all the percussion from my track, it's going to sound like this. Let's remove actually the low-end instruments of the basses and the tubas. So you notice here, there's these crazy peaks in our mids, which are high already, but with these peaks, they're crazier. Now, the thing you want to do is to locate or detect which are the instruments responsible for that. And you can use this plugin called Span, which is free. And if you press Control and left click, it's going to allow you to scout the frequencies and see what is the exact range where the overlap happens. And personally, I know this is gonna it happens because of the melody I have playing here. So this melody, its problem is that it's playing on these very high and sharp instruments, and it's layered. It's like second violins, trumpets, and flute played together. They have this crazy, spike here. So what I did, one thing I could do is to, first thing I did actually is, or that the original composer did, is that he put the trumpets and flute playing the same melody, but the flute are playing the melody on a lower octave. So that creates a bit of a difference in timbre and makes these spikes a bit more gentle. And the second violin is playing on the same, octave as the trumpets though, but I lowered their volume a lot. Now, the second thing you want to do is to locate, other than, writing something that is naturally balanced like that, is to, if you want to take it one step further, you locate the frequencies where that overlap happens and you reduce them heavily like this. I could have been even more aggressive personally, but I wanted to preserve a bit of a natural sound of the trumpets and of the second violins and of the flute. So I did those EQ, stuffs based on what I heard, just to tone down those peaks. Now they're still there. We're still gonna hear that melody in our song, in our track, but with way more gentle peaks. Now another thing you can do is to tweak the peaks of your mid-range of the instruments, but on the whole instrument family. So I did that on brass here. I have this 400 hertz reduction, and on strings as well, just as a way to reduce the overall overlap of frequencies that then generate those peaks. Again, I could have been more aggressive, but I decided not to, and the end result is this. It's still there. What we heard, like the melody, the chords are there, but they're way more gentle now. And it's not as sharp. Because, when I showed you the pick before, I don't know if you heard it, but it sounded very sharp, very unpleasant. That tone, when you have a peak, there's that tone stealthing his way into the arrangement, and that's what helps into creating mud. So if you reduce those tones as much as possible, you get your track to sound slightly better already. And if you do that on as many instruments as possible, you get the best result. I do that only on the instruments where it's very aggressive, like the trumpets here. The second thing you want to have is to have a good balance between your low end and your high end to get something that sounds like this. Now let's check out, for example, what this track would sound like if we have too much low end. Cluttered, close, not very well, not very nice. If you have too much high end instead, sounds very sharp and also small now, and I think airy and I don't know, a wave of splashy sounds, but doesn't have a body, doesn't sound big and strong anymore. So you need to have a good balance in between these two things. As I showed you here, the low end needs to be the one that's dominating. The high end can go up like this if you want, but it doesn't need to go beyond, because you just saw what happens there. Now, there's two things that you need to keep in check. First one is rumble in your low end. So the low end is a very, very sensible part of every single genre of music. And this is the reason why it's very useful to use a good pair of headphones whenever you're mixing or working on to your music. Headphones that have a flat frequency response, that don't have crazy accentuated bass and stuff like that are amazing. I used to produce music on monster beats before, and that gave me shit mixes because I wasn't aware what was going on for real. Now I'm using this DT700 T7 Pro from Biodynamic, 80 ohms. I'm going to leave a link in the description if you want to get them. But they have a very even and balanced frequency response. So I really hear very well what's going on. So if there's rumble in my bass, I hear it very, very well now. And the way to avoid rumble in your bass is chew. So the thing you want to do is to use only a few instruments in your bass. So the bass here is only double basses, tubas, timpani, and that's what they do. Very simple stuff. It's not crazy, right? So you want your low end to be simple like that. And also, you might incur sometimes into a problem where maybe on a specific sample library, maybe you have a bass line of a G, D, A, F, or something like that. And maybe for some reason, the F note sounds way louder than all the other notes in the bass line because of the way your sample library was recorded. In that case, you will have certain bits of your bass line which are vroom, super huge, and others that are super tidy, super quiet. You don't want that, because then you get that sort of overlap in your low end. And the problem is that if, as you saw before, when you get overlaps in the mid range, you can just find the overlap in your frequency response and just tune it down like this, right? With your low end, when you play low end notes, you have a way more broad frequency response, and there's no such thing as precise overlaps. There's just a massive frequency upheaval. So you cannot just do this, because then you're going to affect every single note that's being played by the instrument. The thing you want to do to avoid those sort of imbalances in your low end notes is to use compression. And I made a whole tutorial about compression, But you can either use compression on your specific instrument to make sure that it doesn't go beyond a certain threshold of volume, or you can use multi-band compression on your master to solve that. The second thing you want to do is, for your high end instead, is to take certain instruments and like the instruments you want to sound the brightest and just increase their high end like this. And I did that on French horn. And I also applied some EQing and many other things like multiband compression and all those things to bring my high end forth with this plugin called Isotope Ozone. As you see here, this is like a chain of different effects. This is a mastering chain. And this plugin is a godsend. So what I did is I put this equalizer where I increased the low end a bit, decreased the mid range again, increased the high end. Then I have this multi-band compressor, which is keeping like my low end in check, my high end in check, and all these things. Then I have this imager, which is spreading out certain frequencies more than others as to give a sense of space to my track. And then I have this other EQ, and then this maximizer. And all of those put together sound like this. So it really brought my track to another level. Now, the coolest aspect about this Isotope Ozone plugin is that if all the things I just explained you now, multiband and all those things, scare the hell out of you because they sound very technical, Isotope Ozone makes it very easy for you, even if you're a beginner, to use them because it comes with an incredible amount of presets that you can scroll through and browse through as you listen to your track. Each one has a different vibe to it, different purposes. And you can just scroll through, just listen to your track, find one you really like as you scroll through. And when you find one preset that you do like a lot, the cool thing you can do is you can tweak each single unit of effects of that preset. So if I find this one, I'm like, okay, it sounds good, but the equalizer, I wouldn't like it like this. I can go here and scroll through every single equalizer preset or scroll through every single compressor or maximizer. So you can use presets on presets on presets. And if you're an expert, you can just tweak those yourself and create your own and save your own. And that's what I did with Saber's Edge. Rather, I took a preset and tweaked it. And I have this, custom chain, which is I use for Saber's Edge to, again, dominate the low end so it doesn't go beyond a certain threshold with my multiband compression. And then to have this sort of sparkle on my high range and to reduce the mid range again. So this final touch here can really make or break your track. So be careful with it. And that's why I recommend Ozone 8, because it's done in a way where it's not going to destroy your track because of the presets that are made by actual professionals. So this plugin is like having a mixing engineer in your room with you. You can buy it from Splice with a monthly plan, or you can get it from Plugin Boutique, which is a website where they have deals going on about VST softwares. And if you buy VST from there, they give you virtual cash that you can use on the purchase of your next VST from the same website. I recommend you to get Isotope Ozone and a good pair of headphones for this stuff, because this can really, the balance between your low end and your high end can really make or break your track. And of course, always make sure, if you want to have nice low end and nice high end, to actually have instruments that are filling that space. So in this case, basses, tubas, bass trombone, timpani, and cymbals are responsible for those ranges. And if you play them alone, they sound like this. If we remove them from this track, it's gonna sound very funny instead. Why? Well, because we're lacking the low range, the high range, and now the mids are taking over. So always go for this balance, both in your arrangement, but also in your mixing. And that way, you're going to make sure there is balance in the fours and the J dies are all right. No, but just kidding. But just, consider the things I explained to you today, especially make sure your mids are not overlapping too much. Take care of those and use Ozone 8 to give a facelift to your track like that. You can also use the stock plugins in your DAW. FL Studio has incredible plugins like that, but I highly recommend this one. And again, you can get it from the link down below in the description. And that's all for this video. I hope it was helpful for you, and I'll see you next week with another video if I manage to find a way to actually compose music instead of playing Kingdom Hearts 3 all the time. But yeah, we're gonna see about that. So yeah, guys, see you next time. Bye.